Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. It's currently mid-June, which means it's time to start looking ahead at some anticipated releases for the third quarter of the year. This is a list of books that comes out between July and September, and I wanted to give you this list a little bit early just so if there's anything on this list that piques your interest, you have some time to pre-order it if you want to. We do have a lot of books to get through today. I think I've got almost 50 books on this list, so I'm going to try and keep the descriptions like fairly short and brief, and we'll try to keep things moving and get through the list in a reasonable amount of time. Okay, so we're starting off strong on July 7th. I almost said June, July 7th, with Fabulous Bodies by Chuck Tingle. This is his newest horror book, and it's about a fashion influencer and grave robber who ends up in a sticky situation when the body that she's most recently dug up comes back to life. I previously really enjoyed Bury Your Gaze by this author, so I'm excited to see what this one's like. And then we're also getting Pretty Dead Things by Kelsey Cox, which is supposed to be a sort of secrets from the past, old grudges collide kind of thriller, following a group of beauty pageant contestants who end up trapped under the same roof when a storm knocks out the power in the building where they're supposed to be holding the pageant. So this one sounds like it's going to be like very over the top and fun. Then on July 14th, we're getting The Intrigue by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This one's a noir story following a con man who is targeting a woman in a small town who runs a boarding house, and he gets tangled up with her niece who wants in on his scheme, but the woman that they're targeting might not be as vulnerable as they think. So this is another one that sounds like it's going to be like messy and dramatic, and I just love Sylvia Moreno Garcia's writing. Then we have Hot Girl Murder Club by Ashley Winstead, which is her newest thriller. This is the start of a theme you'll notice throughout this video, which is there were quite a few mystery, thriller, or horror books that I found that are centered around like the film industry in Hollywood. So this one's following an aspiring actress whose sister was murdered about 10 years ago during an industry party, and now she's trying to seek justice for her sister when she gets accused of murder herself. So she has to clear her name in order to avoid being prosecuted and also continue to seek justice for her sister. Meanwhile, there's also an unusual detective who's on the case and is discovering a pattern of murders that could turn Hollywood on its head. So this is yet again another one that sounds like it's going to be like messy and dramatic and fun. So that was the other kind of recurring theme I found here. There is one more theme we'll talk about when we get to it. Then we have Country People by Daniel Mason, and this one, I don't know how it ended up on my list, but it's a sort of humorous lit fic kind of situation about an older PhD student who moves with his family to the woods in Vermont and meets a colorful cast of characters in their new hometown and starts to learn about a local legend that might not just be a legend. So this one sounds like it could be fun. I just don't remember where I heard about it, so no idea how that ended up on the list, but it's here now. Then we also have Killer Vibes by Jack Friday. This one is a detective story about a queer PI in Texas who unexpectedly inherits a house from an uncle that he barely knew. This is that other theme I was talking about. There's quite a few haunted houses, and specifically like either haunted or dilapidated houses inherited from distant relations that kept coming up. But he inherits this house from his uncle and starts to realize that maybe his uncle was murdered. Also, his uncle had a mountain of debt that he's having to deal with, and dealing with both of those situations, he meets a group of people that all seem to have their own hidden agendas. Then on July 21st, we're getting Carry Me to My Grave by Christopher Golden. This is a horror story following a woman who is generally known as the local witch in her, not actually in her hometown, in the town where she raised her children, and her children kind of got used to ignoring that, but now as she's dying, she asks one of her sons, Malcolm, and one of his sister-in-laws, who is not named in the premise, to take her body back to her hometown in Maine. After her death, they get her on a train, they start heading up north to take her, to bury her, and some dark forces start to emerge that seem to be trying to prevent them from reaching their destination. So maybe there's more than meets the eye on those witch accusations. Also, this is a horror set on a train, and I'm really curious to see how that's going to go, just because I think most train stories I've read have been like mystery thrillers, so I'm curious to see how that setting is going to work here. Then on the 28th of July, we're getting We Were Never Here by Sophia Hannon. This one I think is YA, but I'm not 100% sure, but this is about a ghost hunting crew that has to return to the manor that almost killed their friend. Turns out they're actually also art thieves, and they never finished the job they were given at this manor, and they have to go back to try and finish the job while also reckoning with the ghosts that haunt the manor, including their deceased friend. And then we're also getting Furious Violet by Sarai Walker. This one follows a middle-aged woman who returns to her hometown to finish a book that she's been working on. She's been like hitting a lot of creative blocks. She's a crime journalist and the daughter of a famous feminist icon, icon, and she's kind of grappling with being older than her mother was when her mother died. And then she starts to lose her grip on reality, and things start to spiral out of her control when a stalker turns up who claims to be her child, even though she knows she never had children. So I'm really excited for that one. I like a story where somebody starts to lose their grip on reality, and I'm curious to see how the crime journalist aspect is going to play into that side of the story. Then on July 30th, we're getting Fervor by Meg Smitherman. I've read one previous book from this author, which was Thrum. This is an author that does like romantic horror, and I really enjoyed Thrum more than I was expecting, and I'm hoping we'll get more of the same like creepy atmosphere in Fervor. This one's following an interplanetary transporter who is tasked with taking a nun to a small religious colony on a distant planet, and upon arriving, the colony turns out to be a little more cult-like than she was expecting, and she starts to hear a strange voice calling to her. Like I said, I really enjoyed the atmosphere and the like sinister love interest in Thrum, so I'm curious to see if we'll get more of that vibe of book in Fervor. Then on August 4th, we're getting The Unknown by Riley Sager. This one is about a group of women who disappeared suddenly off an island in, I think it's like Vermont or something, but there's group of women disappear off an island, and 100 years later, a film crew comes to make a movie about those disappearances, and then the disappearances start happening again. So this one sounds like it could go either supernatural or not, and I'm really interested to see which direction Riley Sager takes the story. And then we're getting The Infinite State by Richard Swan. This one sounds a lot more serious. I know he's previously written a fantasy series that I've heard really good things about, but this one is a sci-fi set in a fascist galactic empire, and it follows a woman who is the recent widow of one of the party members, and using her new wealth and status and kind of place in society, she starts trying to amass allies and tries to purchase a uncolonized planet so that she can start building a democracy. So this one sounds like it's going to be like very serious, very political, and probably very topical for our current moment in history. Then on August 11th, we're getting A Trade of Blood by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is one of my most anticipated releases of the year. It's the third Shadow of the Leviathan book, which it follows Anna and Din, who are sort of like Sherlock and Watson type detective duo, and they travel through this empire which has these different cantons. They're all like very different environments. It's a sort of sci-fantasy setting, and they're just solving mysteries in the different places they go. This particular one, I'm excited to see where the premise is going to go, because it follows them as they are dealing with a brink of war situation between two very powerful families. One of the families has an eldest son who has been accused of murder, and Anna and Din have to prove that he didn't commit that murder despite the heavy evidence against him in order to keep bloodshed from happening. So I'm very excited to see what direction that's going to go, if it's going to be like, oh, he was framed, or if it was going to be like, yeah, no, he did it, but we have to try and prove that he didn't, so that there isn't this like all-out civil war. I don't know what to expect, but I love this series so much. I'm going to be so excited to be back in the world with those characters, and I have an arc for this one that I am just like dying to pick up. Then we're also getting Reliquary by Hannah F. Witten, which sounds like it could have some very good ocean horror in it. This one follows a young woman who has always been like looking for belonging and connection. She was orphaned very young during a freak boating accident, and now her fiance has just died. So she gets invited to the family home to go to his wake, and the family home is like right on the coast. It's almost like in the ocean. It's one of those like houses on stilts, and the family's connection to the ocean starts to become more and more apparent just as her ability to escape diminishes, but she's not even sure if she wants to escape. So this one sounds like it's got a lot going on, and I'm curious to see how all of those different pieces are going to connect with the ocean part of it. I really hope we get some good ocean horror here, though, because I love some good ocean horror, and I've been looking for another one that like is as good as Into the Drowning Deep. So I'm really keeping my fingers crossed we get some good oceanic horror. Then An Edge Sharp Enough by Jessica Sotanto is her, I think, fantasy debut. She's previously written some like cozy mysteries, but this one is a dark contemporary fantasy series following, actually it's not contemporary fantasy, it's secondary world fantasy, but sort of urban fantasy type, I think. But it's following 4 different people as they are reckoning with the literal crumbling of their world. They live in a fantasy world where the invention of an indestructible metal led to a major revolution, and now that metal is beginning to crumble, and they're not sure if it's because of a flaw in the metal itself, or if there's some sort of external entity that is trying to take them down. So we're following, I think it's an assassin, an inventor's daughter, a con man, and a captain in the military as they are trying to navigate the situation and figure out what the hell is going on. Then we're also getting Dreamland by Olivia Blake, and this is a continuation of that like Hollywood film industry associated horror thriller situation, because this one follows an actress who gets a job working in the house of a family that is very famed within the industry. And it seems like there's some sort of occult curse on the family, or possibly on the eldest son, who's the kind of heir apparent. She becomes slowly obsessed with this eldest son, and it seems like maybe there's also going to be a vampire aspect of the story, because the description contains the phrase, the summer of exsanguination. So I'll be curious to see if I'm right about that, and if it does turn out to be, like, vampire associated. And then we also have Lynx by Samuel Satin and Tokito Koro. This one is a graphic novel, and I couldn't find a whole lot about the actual plot, but it looks like it's some sort of detective story set in a post-apocalyptic world that's trapped in perpetual winter, and that is a series of words that makes me very intrigued, especially because I love a good detective story, so I'll definitely be picking this one up, especially as I've been trying to pick up more graphic novels. It's not a genre I read very much, but I think it could be really fun to get more into. Then on August 18th, we're getting The Calamities by Chuck Wendig. This is the book I was thinking of when I said dark contemporary fantasy. This is, I think, sort of set in our world, but there's half human, half demon people known as fiends who gain power through the trading of human souls, and we're following the heir apparent of a powerful family when he is called home because I think his father is like ill or has recently died, and he's supposed to kind of take his place as the head of the family, but he has to reckon with the fiendish origins of his family's power and decide if he's going to take up the role he's been given or try to forge a new path for himself and maybe change the world in the process. So I think that sounds super fun. I love a good, like, contemporary fantasy, and I'm definitely going to be checking this one out. Then we're also getting The Minimalist by Kaylee Peterson. This is more of a character study following a classical composer's descent into madness after the death of her mentor. She inherits a bunch of stuff from him, including the last piece of music he was working on, and as she's trying to finish this piece of music, she's also reckoning with his death, as well as her own role in the death of her mentor's son. There's a web of connections happening there, but this one sounds like it's going to be, like, very psychological, and I'm really intrigued by it. It sounds like a very interesting character study. And then here's another one of the, like, Inherited a House books. This is These Walls Remember by Del Sandine. This follows two estranged sisters who inherit a house from an estranged aunt, someone they don't really know, and they move into the house intending to, like, fix it up and then sell it, and it's haunted by a dark past, so they have to survive before they can hope to be free of the house. Then on August 25th, we're getting Daggerbound by T. Kingfisher. This is the sequel to Swordheart, and I'm really excited for this one. It sounds excellent. I haven't read Swordheart yet, but I've loved everything I've read for T. Kingfisher, so Swordheart is actually going to be on my July TBR, almost certainly. The premise of these books is that, like, various people discover immortal warriors who are bound to specific swords, and in the first book, I think we're following a young woman who's, like, trying to escape her abusive family, who wants to, like, marry her off and take her fortune, and she pulls out a sword, and turns out there's a guy attached to it, and they end up going on some sort of, like, adventure together. But in this sequel, we're following a scholar who is carrying a set of relics, of ancient relics, from one place to another. He's kind of disillusioned, but he's, like, doing this job of moving relics from one location to another, and he gets attacked by bandits and pulls out one of the relics, which happens to be a sword, and it turns out that it's inhabited by an immortal warrior who saves him, and they have to go on this quest together to deliver the relics, and the immortal warrior is trying real hard to hate the scholar, but the scholar is just too damn nice. So that sounds like it's going to be, like, very sweet, very fun, and probably have a lot of the T. Kingfisher's kind of typical humor in it, which I always love. Then we also get The Silent Appeal by Janice Hallett. This is another one of my most anticipated releases. I have an arc for this that I am just, like, vibrating out of my skin to read, but I'm going to be good and read it closer to the release date. But this one is a follow-up to The Appeal, so we've returned to Lower Lockwood and the Fairway Players as they are putting on Agatha Christie's The Hollow, and of course there's another murder and more interpersonal drama amongst the various Fairway Players. So it looks like it's going to be a ton of fun, and I'm just so excited for this one. Then we're also getting The Devil Knows Her Name by C.N. Vare, and this one I put on the list because I think it sounds like it's twisting some ideas in an interesting direction. We're following a young woman who a century ago, she's not even actually a young woman, we're following a woman who a century ago was left for dead and made a deal with the devil to survive and stay in the place that she loves. Now, at the book's sort of present day, she runs a wildlife sanctuary and generally just tries to protect, like, the local woods, the local wildlife, and the people of her town from the impacts of human influence. But then a sinister pastor I couldn't decide if I was going to say pastor or preacher there. A sinister pastor comes to town and starts turning the townspeople against her. He's really targeting her wildlife sanctuary, and she has to decide if she's going to be predator or prey. And also, throughout the 100 years that she's lived, the devil has continued to come back to her, offering her more power in exchange for a foothold in the world. So that's probably going to play a piece in it as well. And then we're also getting Crocodilopolis by John Manuel Arias, and I'm so glad I managed to say Crocodilopolis in the first try. It's fun to say also. But this one is a sort of fairy tale-esque story about a politician from Costa Rica who was betrayed by his brother and exiled, and he ended up in DC. But at the time of the book, he decides to go back to Costa Rica to try and feed his brother to the river crocodiles. Then on September 1st, we're getting Deadbeat by Leigh Bardugo. This is the third book in the Alex Stern trilogy, and I can't tell you anything about it because I haven't read book 2, so I didn't want to spoil myself reading the plot summary for this, but I am really excited to get to it because I really enjoyed book 1 and I'm hoping to read book 2 very soon. Then we're also getting An Immaculate Deception by Isabella Levino. I've realized I said and then we're also getting a bunch of times, so forgive me, but I'm probably going to say it a bunch more times. But this one sounds like it's going to be a very emotional, difficult read. This one follows a young woman who gets pregnant and ultimately ends up trapped on her lover's family's isolated estate, and she's being looked after by a sinister doctor and trying to escape. Meanwhile, there's some sort of like deal with the devil gone wrong kind of situation happening within the family, and it just sounds like it's going to be really intense and really emotional and poignant. So I'm curious to see how readers feel about this one when it comes out. And then we're also getting, I've said it again, we're also on September 1st getting As the Snow Gathers by Mira Joyce. This one is a horror book following a young man living in an isolated town who is secretly in a relationship with a logger living at the little logging community nearby. I can't remember what it was called. My brain has shut down on that one. But we're following the two of them. They're secretly in love, but living in a very isolated conservative area. But the town is also haunted by these creatures that come in and steal dead bodies, drain them of blood, and then return them in the morning in time for their burial. And this is apparently quite normal in this town, except that just as winter is arriving, the monsters start attacking the living for the first time. And so our main character and his love are trying to, fight for their life against the monsters, but also against this conservative environment that they find themselves in. And then on September 8th, we're getting Taipei Story by R.F. Kuang. This sounds like it's a coming of age story, mostly contemporary coming of age story about a Chinese American student trying to connect to her family heritage, only to find out while she's studying abroad in Taipei that her grandfather has passed away. And so she's grappling with all of the family histories and family stories that she can never know because she wasn't able to or didn't ask questions in time. So I think it's her kind of reckoning with the things that she can never know about her family background. Sounds like it's going to be a very emotional, moving story. And then we're getting Pictures of You by Josh Mallerman. This sounds like a very weird horror book. I'm unclear on what exactly is going on here, but there's something about a woman going on a date with her boyfriend only to wake up and find herself on a bed in a mysterious place with a mysterious figure telling her to stay put. And it somehow transpires that her life and her boyfriend's life are kind of on the line, and she has to think like an artist to escape. I don't really know what that means, but I'll be curious to see what Josh Mallerman's fans think of this one when it comes out. And then we're also getting Wick Hills by Premi Mohammed. This one is I think a novella, possibly. I think it's short, but it's a sort of secondary world urban fantasy following a secret agent who has to protect a defecting foreign scientist who has a dangerous magical weapon that they're trying to hide, and they're trying to work together to avert a war, and they have to go literally underground. So this sounds like it's going to be a really inventive world and a really interesting political story, so I'm excited to give that one a try. And then on September 15th, we're getting Bodies of Magic by Freya Marsk. This is quite different from the other books I've read from her. She's written some excellent fantasy romance. This one is about magical healers who are ready for their final exam, their final medical exam, to go out as fully licensed healers. It's a grueling 5-day process where they're put into randomized exam groups, except this time around, this one group finds one of their classmates dead on day 1. So now they have to finish their exam, solve a murder, and grapple with their own secrets before time runs out. Then we get We Chase Shadows by Richard Osman, which is the follow-up to We Solve Murders. I don't know anything about the series, but I think the sequel is following a murder investigation at a private villa in Italy. So that sounds like it could be a really fun summary read. And then we're getting Rooted by Leopoldo Gout. This is another one with a fairly vague synopsis, but it has something to do with a successful art lawyer who returns home to Mexico City to celebrate a recent campaign to repatriate some stolen artifacts, except that home and her family are not quite how she remembers them, and her forgotten past will not stay buried, and it has something to do with an ancient Aztec god. So that sounds like it's going to be like quite eldritch and creepy, and I'm really curious about this one. I think it sounds like a really cool premise. And then we get Daughter of the Dark by RJ Valdeparis. This one is a romantasy, I believe, following a young woman who sort of suddenly becomes named Royal Demon Slayer. She is a demon hunter in this world that is plagued by demons that are created by human deaths. And so she is named Royal Demon Slayer and suddenly pulled into the court politics and has to navigate that while trying to figure out what is the evil that is like destroying their world and their kingdom. I think she has a sort of like romance with a rival kind of a situation going on, and I just think this sounds like a fun setup. I really like a demon hunter story, so I'm curious to see how that's going to use the concept of like demon hunting in its world building. And then we finally are getting on this day Bigfoot Confidential by Jasmine Kuliasha. This is the follow-up to the Midnight Pack, which I read last year. I had an arc of that one, and I enjoyed the Midnight Pack okay, but it was marketed as an urban fantasy mystery with a romance element, and it's not that. So I am happy to see that Bigfoot Confidential is being marketed as a Bigfoot romantic urban fantasy. I also have seen it described as a supernatural rom-com. I think that those descriptions are much closer to what the series actually is, or at least what the first book really felt like, and I'm really curious to see how this is going to follow up on the first book, because there is a very strong romance element in the first book, and I'm trying to figure out how Jericho is going to go from that situation to this one, or if this is going to be like something that's like backwards in time. I don't know. But I really like Jericho as a protagonist, so despite my issues with the plotting of the first book, I am really interested to see if this one feels like a step up, because I love Jericho as a protagonist. She's just very, like, confident. She's a girl's girl, and she is not going to let anyone give her shit about that, and I just thought she was really fun to follow. Then on September 22nd, we're getting A Complement of Scoundrels. This is a heist story about a thief who was previously betrayed by the leader of their crew, and now that they are out of prison, they are trying to get revenge on the person that betrayed them, while also righting the wrong of this, like, job gone wrong that happened all this time in their past. And it sounds like it's sort of like getting a crew together for one last job kind of story, so that seems like it's going to be fun. And I think I have an arc for this one, so I'll be excited to give this one a shot, because it sounds like it's going to be a good time. And we're also getting Arcade of Salt by Dina Helm, and this is one where I wanted to read you the description, because I feel like the Goodreads description just says this better than I ever could, but first I have to figure out how to get to my notes. Bear with me as I get to my notes, because I forgot that I did this. This one is a multi-generational haunted house story, so yet another haunted house. But the description of this one says, 3 generations of Palestinian women must put the haunting of their ancestral home to rest before the secrets of the past drown them all. Our Cut of Salt is a powerful and intimate look at what it means to make a home, to lose it, and to return only to find it irrevocably changed. So I think that sounds like it's going to be incredibly poignant, incredibly moving, but also like really hard-hitting for our current moment. And I'm really intrigued by this story. So I wanted to make sure this was on my list, and I felt like that description was going to give you a better sense of what the book is about than I ever could trying to summarize it. And finally here we have another one of our kind of Hollywood-based stories. This one's called Maisiewood by Tananarive Due, and this one is following the grandson of a famous Black actress who, as a filmmaker, is going back to his grandmother's cabin retreat after she's passed, and there he starts to discover some dark secrets that she had, and there's also some sort of beast roaming the woods. I think there's also probably like a deal with the devil sort of situation happening here, from what I recall from the premise. So yet another little thread that we're finding throughout all of the stories that I have on my list this time around. But this one sounds really cool, and I've heard so many great things about Tananarive Due's writing. I have The Reformatory on my TBR for July already, and if I enjoy that, I'm definitely going to be picking up Maisiewood as well. Then on September 29th, which I think is our final day. We're getting Mestra by Madeline Miller. This is yet another mythology retelling from her. This one follows Mestra, who is blessed by Poseidon with the ability to transform into anything she can imagine, and her father, who is cursed by Demeter with an endless hunger. It's Madeline Miller. It's going to be a good mythology retelling. That's that. Then we have The French Illusion by John Grisham. This is a thriller about a newlywed couple that gets kidnapped in the French countryside, and this turns out to be connected to a larger pattern of similar kidnappings, and a CIA investigation kind of gets built up around the situations. Like the French and the American governments are working together, and a young lawyer gets recruited to act as bait in their investigation. So that one sounds like it's going to be like very tense, and I'll be happy to give it a try. I previously read and loved several John Grisham novels, but his most recent book before this one, The Widow, I have not cared for, so I'm going into this one like cautiously optimistic. And then we're getting Video Night by Adam Cesar. This is one that I really don't understand the premise. There's something to do with two best friends who are throwing like one last big party before they finish high school and like move off in different directions. But also they have to figure out what to do about the fact that there's an alien infection taking over their town. So they got to deal with that too before they can go off and do their individual things. And that's all I got from the premise. I don't really understand what it means, but I've heard great things about this author's previous work, so maybe it's going to be a fantastic horror. I think it's supposed to be sort of like an 80s themed horror, so should be a fun time. And then finally, our last book here is Astarion by T. Kingfisher. This is going to be a backstory for the character of Astarion from Baldur's Gate 3, and I know it's going to devastate me, but I will be reading this because T. Kingfisher is one of my favorite authors, and I really like Astarion. He is one of my favorite characters in Baldur's Gate 3, but this one is following him. If you're unfamiliar with him, he's a vampire spawn who is tied to a vampire lord named Cazador, and this book is following him as he is trying to break free of Cazador's control, and through the process makes an unexpected new connection. It's going to be devastating because we know where he starts at the start of Baldur's Gate 3. We know kind of the situation he's in at that point, but I'm super excited to read it anyway. I'm ready to have my heart ripped out. So those are all the books that I'm aware of that are coming out between July and September, and I'm really curious to see what readers are thinking of these when they come out. I feel like we have some really exciting releases for the next few months, and I cannot wait to dig in, especially to those few that I have arcs for. But let me know down in the comments below if there's anything coming out in the next few months that you're aware of that I didn't have on my list, and also let me know in the comments below if there's anything on this list that you're particularly excited for. Are there any of these that you're going to pick up as soon as they're out, or ones that you have arcs for that you're looking forward to getting to? And I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I hope you consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting at least once a week, and I hope to see you in the next video.